Hello, and welcome to America's Veterans. My name is Len Sorotsky, and I will be your host. One of the greatest decisions in our nation's history was the Great Compromise of 1787, which created the bicameral organization of Congress. One chamber would be called the Senate and would consist of 2 members from each state, no matter how large or how small. The second chamber would be called the House of Representatives, and membership would be derived from each state's population. The greater the population, the more members a state would have. We are required to take a national census every 10 years. In the beginning, there would be 1 congressperson for every 30,000 citizens or less. In 1910, it was clear that the population was growing so rapidly that there would be no way to organize all the members. So the system was changed, such that the membership in the House of Representatives would forever be fixed at 435. That means that the total population of the nation would be divided by 435, and the resulting number would determine how many representatives a state would have. Today, each congressperson stands for about 700,000 citizens. Obviously, the job should be easy because how difficult could it be to get 700,000 individuals to agree on any subject? Well, we might get some insight from our very special guest. We are deeply honored to have with us our Congressman of Florida's District 13, Mr. Vern Buchanan. Congressman,
good to see you.
Welcome to our show, and thank you for being here. This is going to be probably a little less typical from the other interviews that you go through and so on, but I think people might want to know a little bit about you. And on our shows, what we always do is ask our guests to tell us who they are. So could you please start with your family and take it from the time you were born and where, and bring us up through your school years?
That could be a long story.
Well, yeah, it could. Yeah.
Well, I would just say that I was born in Detroit. My mother was from northern Michigan. My father was from Kentucky. They both came to Detroit during the war to find work. And so I ended up being born there. And then I grew up in a small community called Inkster, Michigan, which was mainly all blue-collar families. It was great. I was Lutheran, but most of the kids were Catholic, so every day at 3 o'clock we'd have 30 boys, 40 boys show up for sports. It was different back then because you had a ball field and we didn't have parents. It wasn't as organized sports, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I went to high school in that community, and then from there ended up going into the service. I was in the Air National Guard, went to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas for about 6 weeks there, then Biloxi, Mississippi, went for 4 or 5 months, air-to-ground communications, and then there was a 6-year commitment for the reserves. And then I decided to go to college from there, a small college in Ypsilanti, Michigan, Cleary College, and I was had the I thought about being a draftsman or something, but I decided, someone talked me into going into business administration, get a 4-year business degree, and that's what I did. But one of the things that really changed my life, because most kids in that area, and I was one of 6 kids, but most kids in that area, they did like their parents did. My father worked in the factory for 35 years. They were great parents. My mother worked in the factory after the kids were pretty well grown. But my brother went to work for General Motors Hydromatic, and everybody was thinking about working there for 30 years and 30 years and out. But I had an opportunity. A guy that I got employed by was an 8th degree black belt. I started out as a student, and I used to teach Korean karate or Taekwondo, and he really changed my thinking, the way I looked at things and the way I looked at life. Instead of looking at the glass half empty, look at it half full, set big goals. And I went from a very mediocre student in high school, C's and B's, mainly C's, And then in college, went to almost all A student. And again, he just would constantly be pushing me. So having a mentor in life, I was very fortunate and blessed. And then from there, got into business, and for the last 30 years, I don't know how much you want me to go through that, but just to give you a little bit of a oversight.
No, you got to. I think that's a good fast start. You were in sports? Were you in sports?
I grew up in a lot of sports, but most of our sports, and I tell people even in business, were all sandlot sports. So you'd have 30 boys show up, you'd pick up captains, you'd pick up your teams, and then if in Detroit, when it was in the fall, when the NFL was playing football, we played football. In the summer, we played baseball, and then we played hockey in the winter and some basketball. But most of it was pickup sports, but I'd get out of school and play at 11 o'clock at night. I didn't do much homework, but I really enjoyed that, and I just love sports. And when I think about in businesses that I've been in for 30 years, it's the same thing. It's about having a game plan. It's about trying to get the best talent, and it's about being a competitor and wanting to win, and it's about working as a team to get the ball in the end zone.
And during those early years in your life, did you have favorite sports heroes?
Yeah, I was a big, especially the Detroit Tigers. I knew all of the Detroit Tigers in 1968. I graduated in 69 from high school, but 68 we won the World Series. And we had Denny McClain that won 31 games, and Norm Cash and Rocky Colavito and all those guys. They used to have a little package where for a nickel, you get 4 or 5 cards and a little stick of gum. And I used to have huge decks of cards and follow all my baseball heroes. Yeah.
Now, you do know that I hated the Detroit Tigers, don't you?
No, I didn't know that.
In 1945, do you know what the Tigers did?
No, I don't remember.
They beat the Cubs in a World Series. That was totally disgusting. Yeah.
Well, they had a good run in 1968, and back then it was basically Baltimore Orioles, New York Yankees, and Boston Red Sox and Detroit every year. They were trying to get the American League pennant. So it was exciting times for Detroit sports.
Well, how about hockey?
Well, Red Wings always had my big hero there, and I got a chance to meet him later in life, was Gordie Howe.
Well, of
he
course.
was just incredible, played for the Red Wings, and that was a great opportunity, a great venue. And as kids, we loved hockey. We'd go down there and shave off the ice. My dad would build a little pond in the backyard, and that time of the year, we played hockey all day long.
I can't imagine you on skates, but it might be an interesting.
Actually, I wasn't too bad on skates. I still skate a little bit when I go out to.
Do you really?
Yeah, I skate some, but it's not like it doesn't feel the same. That's for sure.
Yeah. You never played marbles, though. I'm sure.
Yeah, we played marbles, but I'd rather play sports. I mean, I was more interested in basketball and football. There was just something about that, and I had a brother that was a year younger than me, and he was competitive, and he hated losing, so I remember playing basketball at night in the backyard, and the neighbors would be calling the police at midnight because we'd be making all the noise and a lot of trash talking, and so it was a lot of fun.
That's great. That's great. So, generally speaking, you were just a kid growing up. Your parents were blue-collar workers, would that be fair to say?
My dad bought a house, I still remember, because of the 6 kids, I was the oldest. He bought a house on the GI Bill because he served in the Navy during World War II in 1954, 55 for $12,900, little 3-bedroom house. I grew up from the time I was 3 to 4 to 18 there. It was great growing up. I mean, my dad worked afternoons, my mom didn't drive, so basically you just lived in the neighborhood. The other great experience I had is that back then I had a Detroit newspaper route, and from the time I was 12 to 16, every day, 7 days a week, I worked every day right after school. I'd go get my 60, 70 papers, deliver them, but the thing that was neat about it is that every Friday I'd have to go collect from the customers and pay my bill on Saturday, and it was the paper for the whole week was 75 cents, and I'd give them 50 cents and keep a quarter, but I'd always find the customers that give me a quarter tip, and I'd make sure their paper got inside the door.
That's really cool. Yeah. Now, do you go back to Michigan very often? Or
yeah, we still have a home up there. When we moved, my wife, we've been married 34 years, but my wife said, as long as one of her parents were living, she wanted to keep a residence up there.
Wow,
so we've
that's cool.
always kept a a residence there, and her mom's 92, so that's in still good health.
Wow. So you've been to Frankenmuth for chicken dinner and
yeah,
and all that
that
stuff.
doesn't get any better than Frankenmuth.
No, it doesn't.
All you can eat.
And for people who've not been to Michigan, I think on their next trip up there, they'll probably go to Greenfield Village and Henry Ford Museum. And Michigan is loaded, absolutely loaded, with 1 million lakes to go with it, and so on. So
well, tourism, like Florida, is their second biggest industry, and it's a big industry because of the Great Lakes and the climate in the summer, and even in the winter, snowmobiling, and we've got some skiing up there, not like Colorado, but the skiing is pretty good too.
I should let you know that my son-in-law is the fire chief in Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Jeez, what a small world. I lived in Ypsilanti. I lived in Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Yeah, I heard you say that.
Yeah, they used to call it Ipsy-Tucky.
Ipsy, yeah. Now, at what point did you decide, now I know you went into small business and I know you did a heck of a job and so on, and I went into small business once. That was, I think I lasted 2 days or something like that. But you did really, really well for yourself, and I think you should be proud of that. The other thing that is worth mentioning is that you were lucky enough to get a wife who would stick with you for 34 years. And I know you have 2 sons who they're grown and kind of off on their own now. But
yeah, I'm very excited. Both of our kids got offered scholarships to play football. They went to school here locally, but they played football, one at Florida State and one at Stanford.
Wow.
And they're back in the community. My oldest son has his own brokerage firm, and my youngest son now is running our store, Sarasota Ford. He's the operating partner for my Ford store in Sarasota, and he's doing a great job. Both of them are doing a great job, so their mother's very happy that they're back in town, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I know, I can imagine. When was the first time you ever thought about getting involved in politics?
What happened was, it's funny because my parents were Democrats all their life growing up, and then in 1979, I just remember Jimmy Carter, where there were some challenges with, we were held captive in Iran, and Ted Koppel every night when I used to stay up that late had us the Eagle in the Cage, day 146 and that.
Right.
And at the same time, of course, our economy was struggling, and along came Ronald Reagan, and I'm just a big fan of his vision, his enthusiasm, and so I really got caught up in thinking about politics then, in terms of I never thought about it before, but that's kind of when I got involved. So I've really been involved on and off for about 30 years, but never really thought about running for office until about 4, 5, 6 years ago.
And are you enjoying it?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think of you're a kid, you like to give gifts. So as I get older, my goal is to help other people be successful. I've always done that in business, help my employees be successful, customers be successful. So public service to me is about serving them. It's not about me, and I think it's a way to give back. If you've been fortunate and blessed and you've had 30 years of a successful business career, it's time to give back. I mean, I could continue in business, but I think that we got real issues out there in terms of debt and deficit, and we have to do more, I think, to promote small businesses and create jobs. So I just felt it was time when Catherine Harris decided, as our representative at that time, that she was going to run for the U.S. Senate. And there was an opportunity here. I thought, well, I've thought about it a little bit, not much, but if I'm ever going to do anything, this would be a great way to get involved and give back.
Well, I do think you're doing a great job.
Well,
I do. And reasons I can say that is because I am aware of some of your efforts at communication with the large number of people who are in a district, District 13, and somewhere during our time together, we will have a map of District 13 so that viewers can see the kind of territory we're talking about. And it's not only Bradenton or only Sarasota, it's a whole large area, and everybody has a different opinion. And so I think pretty much more than anyone I've ever known, you make every effort to reach out. You do it geez, you do Facebook and email and your all of the meetings that you have with groups of people and so on. I think that's absolutely fantastic, where other congressmen are always hidden. And I know you've been involved with many, many pieces of legislation, probably too much for us to even talk about. But what I want to focus on a little bit, if you don't mind, is your efforts for veterans, because those have been spectacular. Let's kick off with the service academies.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Let me say one thing about the reach out, and then I want to talk about the service academies.
Yeah.
What I heard for so many years, Democrats and Republicans, is Washington isn't listening.
That's right.
So that's why I've done so many town halls. We do a lot of emails, buchanan.house.gov, and we try to encourage people to get involved, send us their ideas. We do surveys, because I tell people I'm humbled to be a congressman, but at the end of the day, I'm a representative, and I'm trying to represent the people the best I can. And the only way I can do that is to listen. Yeah. And that's really what I try to do. I'm glad you brought up the service academies, because last night, in fact, Len, we had 9 appointments to our service academies, 5 to West Point. I represent 5 counties, 3 to the Naval Academy, 1 to the Air Force Academy, and it's just so exciting. I want to see more of our kids in Manatee County. One of the kids from one of the local high schools got into West Point. I was excited about that, but 2 or 3 years ago, because I'm a blue-collar kid, 2 young ladies from Palmetto High, when we got accepted, I got appointments for them for the Naval Academy. We spent $500,000 on these kids. We try to get the best and the brightest, and it's a real opportunity, because not only do they come out as an officer and a gentleman, or an officer and a lady, but they also get a chance to really develop leadership skills. Yep. That they'll end up either in the service, being a great general someday, or if they get out back into the private sector, there are many times many of the top leaders in business and industry and everything else. So it's an incredible opportunity, and I would just encourage all your viewers that have grandchildren or children to really look at the service academies. They're world-class. It's a great opportunities for parents, especially because financially the government's picking up the tab. And my youngest son, I'm so proud of him, went to Stanford, and that's a great school, but the service academies academically are just as good, but you get the opportunity to be a leader at a young age, which is an additional opportunity. So anybody in Manatee County, we got a lot of great young men and women, and I take it very serious, and we put a lot of kids every year in the academies, and we just want to make sure. As a kid growing up, a blue-collar kid, I didn't even know anything about service academies probably until I was 35. But the point is, there's real opportunities there, and we want to reach out to our kids about that.
Is there any possibility I could be considered?
I think you got a good shot, but I'm going to have to get probably a couple more members to recommend you.
Of all of the legislation that you've been a part of, tell us a little bit about, I want to know a little bit more about that had to do with veterans. Like, for example, if you wouldn't mind to talk, let's deal with the cemetery first. That's a super important thing.
Well, the cemetery was something, there's a project that the veterans have really been focused on in all these counties. And by the way, we have 97,000 veterans that I'm very excited about serving. And then, but outside my congressional area, they got a 75-mile radius for veterans, a service radius they call it. There's almost 400,000, 387,000 veterans and their families. Yeah. So it was something that got initially started, but we didn't have any of the funding. And I knew in the veterans community that was their #1 issue, because otherwise they've got to go a long ways, Bucknell or something way up north if they want to be buried in a veteran cemetery. Yeah. And the families. So we have worked on it. We required the land. I think it was about $14 million for 300 some acres. We've got quite a few burials out there already, and then we've let the contracts. We're building a lot more facilities for veterans. They're excited about. That's another 14 or 16 million. So we're adding a lot more capability, a lot more facilities out there, and I know the veterans are very enthused about it.
Yep, they are, because it's really, and it isn't only the soldier himself or herself, but it's a family issue. Yeah. And I think you should be very proud
Well, not
everything
just
you did
the
there.
veteran, but many times they can have their wife, spouse,
That's what
and
I mean.
others. Yeah, so it's a whole family thing.
Yeah.
All right, to give you some sense of, Lynn, of the enthusiasm, when we sent out the first notice about a groundbreaking, we thought we built the tent for about 1,000.
Yeah.
We had 5,000. We turned away probably a couple thousand more. It was just packed, roadblocks all the way out there. But it's just amazing how many veterans really want to be with fellow veterans, and ideally in the Manatee region, Sarasota region, and we were able to get a world-class veterans facility.
And then there are a couple of other things, at least a couple of other. One is the clinic. Can you talk a little bit about the Manatee Clinic? I was hoping that we could meet at the clinic, and maybe we could do that at a different time. But,
yeah, I'd love to do that. We had
that.
2 small clinics. Frankly, they were, I thought, a little bit run down, needed repair, and we're able to combine them together, more capability, more things that can be done here locally in Manatee County, and a world-class facility. I've been out there. I really encourage all our veterans to go out there. 20-some thousand new square footage of facility, and I just, in talking to veterans that have used the service, they're very excited about what that represents for this community.
Yeah, and I think it's always good to point out that even if you have an excellent clinic, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can be admitted today and receive the kinds of services you need tomorrow. It doesn't work that way.
Well, it doesn't necessarily, but some people do get services, I think, quicker because we've got more capability.
Sure.
And I was looking at the numbers the other day. We've got 15,000 veterans that have been through the facility or through the facilities here locally. So it's being used quite well. And the feedback I've gotten talking with veterans that have used it, they've been very enthused about it. And again, I think there's eye care and dental and things that we've added additionally here that veterans are excited about.
Yeah, and one other thing that's relatively recent, the Veterans Pension Protection Act.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we're just trying to do, I was on the veterans, the VA, we oversee all the benefits to the veterans, and we continue to fight, and I want to take a minute too about the GI Bill in a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Is to make sure these veterans that are disabled and getting some money and also their benefits, we're always fighting to make sure whatever they've earned they get, and so we're excited this is moving in the right direction. But I want to continue to do more for our veterans. You know, I said I represent almost 100,000 veterans. I work for them. I want to do everything I can to make sure they get every benefit they've earned.
And if somebody wanted to reach your office,
yeah, we have an office.
Question.
Yeah, we have an office right here in Bradenton.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to move the office to downtown Bradenton, but it's right on Manatee Avenue and Dan Miller's old facility, but we're moving to a new one downtown, so we're really excited. That's going to be, we'll have an open house there, hopefully July or August with our new facility, but we're very excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. And just on a kind of an aside, I know you spend a lot of time in Washington. That's north of here, I think.
Yeah.
When you're there, if one of your constituents was going to go to Washington, could they call your office in Washington?
Well, they not only call it, we have people up there to set up tours. If they're in town and I'm in town, I'll make sure to meet with them.
Yeah.
But we have people that come up all the time, whether it's cardiologists. Last week, I'm just thinking about, but so many different people. Many times people bring in their families. It's a 2-hour flight in the downtown Ronald Reagan Airport, and then you're 10 minutes into the city, and they've got all kinds of great facilities and things that you can visit. And so I would encourage, a lot of your listeners, if they haven't been to Washington, come on down and I'll make it a point to meet with them if they're in town. But we can get them a lot of tours, and a lot of these tours are basically free. Most of them, I think all of them are free. So it's a great way to spend some time, educational time, but it's fun stuff. Spy Museum, Smithsonian, Space Museum. So there's so many neat things for families or for seniors that would like to get up there and really see it. Especially the fall, the spring is a great time of the year.
Yeah, that's good. Now, just a few minutes ago, you mentioned that you wanted to make some references to VA. Is there?
Yeah.
Would you like to do
what
that?
I was saying in terms of, I wanted to mention in terms of the GI Bill, we have really enhanced that. I know as a kid going to college, I didn't have the GI Bill because you had to be active duty for so long, but the GI Bill, we've expanded that substantially, where we pick up all the tuition, books, fees, and then there's a small stipend of about $1,000 a month, so that anybody that serves, a young man or woman, at least 2 years active, they can get a full college education paid for.
Yep.
And that's something I fought for, because usually most of the kids, not all of them, a lot of them are from blue-collar families. They don't have, sometimes they feel like, the same opportunities. So if a kid's going to put his life on the line for our freedoms, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure, if they want to get an education, that they do. And that's what we really push, because I'm the first one in my family to go to college, and I know someone said that it's a ticket to get in the race in terms of opportunities, economic opportunities. Mm-hmm. So we really want to encourage our young men and women that are either serving, take advantage of it, it's something they've earned, or if a young person out of high school would like to serve in the Marine Corps or something else, this is a real opportunity they need to look at when they're considering whether they do it or not.
It's a lifetime decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Well, we're moving towards the end of this program, and I've only got about 1,000 questions left to ask you, but I'm going to have to pass on those, and instead I'm going to ask you if you have any final thoughts, or if you have a question that you wish I had asked you. Could you
I think that the big issue of the day, there's two things. One is what we're going to be working on the next 2 years. Everybody says, Vern, what are you focused on? One is jobs and getting people back to work. What that means is helping small businesses be more successful. Big corporations and CEOs, that's a different issue.
Sure.
But small, medium-sized businesses, we're focused on that because we've got to get our economy going back. There's too many people still out of work. The second thing is we're really spending our time and our energy on is deficits and debt. We are 14 trillion in debt, going to 20 trillion. Mm-hmm. We've got to turn that around, or we put everything at risk. I said, America is like the golden goose, but it can only give out so many golden eggs. You're going to kill the goose. We've got to make sure that we don't spend more than we take in, and that's why when I first ran, I introduced the Constitutional Balanced Budget Amendment that simply says you don't spend more than you take in.
Mm-hmm. Do you have hope for America?
I do. I'm very optimistic. I think it's the greatest nation by far ever invented on Earth, but I'm fighting every day to make sure that American dream is alive for our kids and grandkids.
Thank you. And that brings to a close today's chapter of America's Veterans. We offer a special salute to Congressman Vern Buchanan for joining us today. Thanks also to METV for making this program possible, and a special thanks to you, our audience, for taking some of your valuable time to join us. Please remember that freedom is never free. The cost of keeping it is very high. If you are enjoying your freedom today, thank a vet. I hope you will join us next time on America's Veterans. God bless you, and God bless America.